We're here to see the new Anti-Modern American video. Do you guys have that? Hey Jordan, where's that new Anti-Modern American video? Hey, I got it coming, birds, don't worry. You want to hear about Evola? You want to hear about Eliad? Don't worry about it. I got an Eliad video coming today, okay? I'll send you the link. Anti-Modern American, when's the next video? I need that next video. Hey, don't worry, Lily, I got you. We're gonna have that next video coming up right now. Alright guys, we're back. You heard it first from the turkeys, you heard it from the dogs, all the animals, man, they're just screaming out for the next Anti-Modern American video, and I don't blame them, honestly, you know? It's understandable. So first we're going to do a little update here, and then we'll jump into a little bonus video from the last book, the Mircea Eliade book. And so the update is, the next two books we're going to be covering is Men Among the Ruins. It's going to be a political book, and then so we're going to be doing two books in the background, two Heidegger books, to introduce you guys to Heidegger with his two most important works, which is Being and Time, and the other one's called Contributions to Philosophy on the Event. And then we're going to focus, so after this political book, Men Amongst the Ruins, we're going to focus on Heidegger's ontology and some spiritualism, okay? We're going to do nothing but spiritualism. I think it's 9 books. And then we're going to, I don't know, hopefully I'll have enough subscribers I can kind of take a poll, or I can do a Twitter poll or something. We'll see what happens. But right now we're going to do these 9 books. And the Heidegger books are going to take a long time. So we'll probably be done with these probably when we're wrapping up with Being and Time, and then I'll do the contribution ones. So got a lot on our plate here. First we got Spiritual Authority and Temporal Power by René Guénon. So these are all going to be René Guénon and Evola. We're going to focus on the traditionalists for right now, and these are the two most famous. And then the other traditionalists, like I've said, I want to touch on are Eliade and Wolfgang Smith, but that'll be down the line, probably the next block of spiritualism books. So Spiritual Authority and Temporal Power. Then we got Ride the Tiger by Evola. We got Introduction to the Study of Hindu Doctrines by Guénon. We got The Mask and Face of Contemporary Spiritualism by Evola. The Reign of Quantity and Signs of the Times by Guénon. This is a book or an essay on René Guénon by Evola I thought would be interesting. René Guénon, A Teacher for Modern Times. Man and His Becoming according to the Vedanta by Guénon. Then we got The Mystery of the Grail by Evola, and we'll wrap it up with something called The Multiple States of the Being by René Guénon. And the order's subject to change, but I'm pretty set on these books, and honestly, I'm probably pretty set on the order. I'm going to talk to a friend of mine and see if he likes this order, and if he has any suggestions, I'll take it into consideration, but I'm pretty sure this is probably going to be the order here, guys. So let's all get excited about that. It's real cool and stuff. And so next we have Mircea Eliade, The History of Religion as a Branch of Knowledge. And I haven't read this yet. I thought it'd be cool to just go through it. I wanted to read it, so I thought I'd just read it on camera. I'm not going to have much commentary because usually I, prepare notes and stuff. But it's about 16 pages. So, if you just want to listen to this while you're riding in the car, I'll just read it for us. The History of Religion as a Branch of Knowledge. The science of religions as an autonomous discipline devoted to analyzing the common elements of the different religions and seeking to deduce the laws of their evolution, and especially to discover and define the origin and first form of religion, is a very recent addition to the sciences. It dates from the 19th century and was founded at almost the same time as the science of language. Max Muller gave it the name Science of Religions, or Comparative Study of Religions, in the preface to the first volume of his Chips from a German Workshop, London, 1967. It is true. Hold on, guys. Let me get my e-cig real quick while we settle down for this. Sorry about that. That wasn't very smart of me, was it, guys? There it is. It is true that the term science of religions had been sporadically used earlier in 1852 by the Abbé Prosper Leblanc, in 1858 by Stiefelhagen, etc., but not in the strict sense given to it by Max Müller, which then passed into current usage. The first university chair of the history of religions was founded at Geneva in 1873. In 1876, 4 were established in Holland. In 1879, a chair was instituted at the Collège de France, and in 1885, a special section at religious sciences was organized at the École des Hautes Études at the Sorbonne. You know how these French people are in their pronunciations. The Free University of Brussels instituted a chair of the history of religions in 1884. Germany followed in 1910, and with the first chair at Berlin and others later in Leipzig and Bonn. The other European countries fell in with the trend. In 1880, the Revue de l'Histoire des Religions was founded in Paris by M. Vernes. In 1898, the Archive für Religionswissenschaft at Freiburg im Breisgau by Dr. Achilles. In 1905, Anthropos, a journal devoted chiefly to primitive religions, at St. Gabriel Modeling near Vienna by William Schmidt. In 1925, Studi Materiali de Storie delle Religioni by R. Pettazzoni. American journals in the field: the Journal of Religion, University of Chicago, 1921. The Review of Religion, Columbia University, 1936. In Germany, the place of the Archive für Religionswissenschaft was ceased publication after the Second World War, and it was taken over by Zeitschrift für Religions und Geistesgeschichte, 1948. I actually do want to learn German, so I should be laughing that I do want to learn this eventually, but I haven't started yet. I speak a little bit of French from college, but German's the one I want to hunker in on. So, Zalmoxis Revue des Études Religieuses, founded by Mircea Eliade in 1938. Hey, that's us. We're reading that book. Ceased publication after its 3rd volume. Oh, that's sad. 1938 to 1942. Newman International Review for the History of Religions, issued by the International Association for the History of Religions and edited by R. Pettazzoni, the same guy from earlier, in 1925, had been published at Leiden since 1954. The same association had brought out the International Bibliography of the History of Religions for the years 1952. The first International Congress for the Sciences of Religion was 1897 in Stockholm. In 1900, the Congrès de l'Histoire des Religions opened at Paris. Its name was intended to exclude theology and the so-called philosophy of religions from its deliberations. Huh, that's interesting. The Congress of the History of Religions excluded theologians and philosophers of religion. Interesting. The 9th International Congress was held in Tokyo in 1958. Gradually, bibliographies, dictionaries, encyclopedias multiplied. Publications of sources increased. Particularly noteworthy were the Encyclopedia of Religion and Ethics, 13 volumes, in Edinburgh, 1908 to 1923. And Die Religion in Geistheit und Gegenwart, Hans Wartenbuch for Theology und Religionswissenschaft, 5 volumes in Tübingen, 1909 to 1913. And a 3rd edition is in course of publication. Okay, another one was Religion, Geistlichkeit Leichenburg, edited by A. Bertha Holt. Textbook Zur Religionsgeschichte, edited by E. Lineman, was published in Leipzig, 1912, and later edited by E. Leinham and H. Haas. Fontes Historiae Religiorum ex Auctoribus, Graces et Latinas, by C. Clement in Bonn, 1920. H. Haas and others. Okay, and then we have J.B. Picard with his Ancient Near Eastern texts relating to the Old Testament from Princeton, 1950. And we have the ancient Near East in pictures related to the Old Testament. So, according to Guinan, those were particularly noteworthy. But though the science of religions as an autonomous discipline had its beginning only in the 19th century, interest in the history of religions goes back much further in the past. We find it documented for the first time in classic Greece, particularly from the 5th century. Okay, the interest was manifested in two ways: by travelers' accounts. This would be interesting to read, whatever this collection is. The travelers' accounts that included descriptions of foreign cults and comparisons with the Greek religious practices, and by philosophy's criticisms of the traditional religion. Wow, Herodotus, 484 and 425 BC to 425 BC. So about 500 years, well, this is probably 450 because he had to be mid-age. 450 years before Christ, this Greek pagan went around and compared his religion to other foreign cults. I would really like to read that for the channel sometime. I was thinking once, so like after these 9 books, the spirituality block, the next block is either going to be politics, another spirituality block, or just a religion block where we just read Christian and pagan holy texts, and something like that would be really cool. I would, throw that in there. The same guy, Herodotus, already surprisingly presented accurate descriptions of several barbarian and exotic religions from Egypt, Persia, Thrace, and Scythia, and even advanced hypotheses concerning their origin and their relations to the cults and mythologies of Greece. The pre-Socratic thinkers inquired into the nature of the gods and the value of myths, and founded rationalistic criticism of religion. Thus, for example, for Parmenides, who was born circa 520, and Empedocles, 495 to 435, so this is BC, the gods were personifications of natural forces. Democritus, 460 to 370 BC, even seems to have been curiously interested in foreign religions, which he knew at the source from his numerous journeys. A book on the sacred writings of Babylon was attributed to him, as well as Chaldean treaties and a Phrygian treatise. Oh, these were 2 different books. I thought it was one. I'm sorry. Chaldean treaties and Phrygian. He's not trying to say Phrygian treaties, I think it says. Plato, who was 429 to 347 BC, made frequent use of comparisons with the religions of the barbarians. As for Aristotle, was 384 to 322. He first systematically formulated the theory of the religious degeneration of humanity, metaphysics. That would be interesting to read. I've never read Aristotle's Metaphysics, so Chapter 7, it looks like, he first systematically formulated the theory of the religious denigration of humanity. We should read that for the channel. I'd like that. That's why I wanted to read this. I thought it would give us, did I scare you there, Lily? I thought it would give us good, ammunition for the hand cannon of fighting modernity and give us some recommendations. Aristotle, see, that's what's so funny, though. That's what makes you think about cyclical time so much, right? Is even, old Aristotle here, 2,400 years ago, was coming to the same conclusions Guinan's coming to, right? The religion is degrading. An idea that would often be revived in later times, talking about metaphysics. Theophrastus, 372 to 287, who succeeded Aristotle as the head of the Lyceum, may be considered the first Greek historian of religions. According to Diogenes Laertius, V48, volume 48, he composed a history of religion in 6 books, but it was especially after the conquest of Alexander the Great that Greek writers had the opportunity to obtain direct knowledge of the religious tradition of the Oriental peoples and to describe them. Under Alexander, Berosus, a priest of Bel, published his Babyloniaca, I think. Megasthenes, who between 302 and 297 was several times sent as ambassador to the Indian king Sandracotos by Silesius Nicator, published his Indica. Hey, Hecataeus of Abdera, or as known as Teos, 365 to 270/275, wrote on the Hyperboreans and devoted. Ooh, we gotta read that. And devoted his Aigyptia to the theology of the Egyptians. Hold on. I don't have a pen by me. Oh yeah, there's one. We're gonna make a note of that right there. Look at that. All right. The Alexandrian world thus came to know a considerable number of exotic myths and rites and religious customs. At Athens, in the beginning of the 3rd century, Epicurus undertook a radical criticism of religion. In his view, the universal consensus proves that the gods didn't exist, but he regards them as superior and distant beings who have no relation to man. Wow, that's interesting. So, demiological thinking almost. His thesis became especially popular in the Latin world of the 1st century due to largely the genius of Lucretius. But it was the Stoics who deeply influenced the whole of late antiquity by developing the method of allegorical interpretation, which enabled them to preserve and at the same time revalorize the mythological heritage. I wonder what that means. The allegorical interpretation method. I think they're going to say. According to the Stoics, myths reveal either philosophical views on the basic natures of things or ethical doctrines. The many names of the gods designate one sole divinity, and all religions express the same fundamental truth. Only the terminology varies. The Stoic allegorical method made it possible to translate any ancient or exotic tradition into a universal and easily understandable language. The method gained wide acceptance, and it was frequently employed later. That's interesting. The idea that some gods were kings or heroes defied for the services that they had rendered to humanity had found proponents from the time of Herodotus, but it was Euhemerus, 330 to 260, who popularized this pseudo-historical interpretation of mythologies in his treatise, The Sacred Scripture. Euhemerus found all adherents due chiefly to the fact that the poet Ennius translated the sacred scripture into Latin, and that the Christian polemics later took over Euhemerus' arguments, proceeding with a far stricter historical method. The historian Polybius and the geographer Strabo attempted to discover the possible historical elements in certain myths. Among the Roman eclectic Cirso and the Varro deserve particular mention for the historio-religious value of their work. The 40 books of Varro's Roman antiquities were a storehouse of erudition. In his On the Nature of the Gods, Cirso gave a quick, accurate description of the state of rites and beliefs in the last century of the pagan era. That would be another one I'd really want to read, guys. That sounds great. When I say I want to do a religion section, what that section would be comparing Catholicism versus paganism for the spiritual reawakening of the West. And stuff like this would be great, right? Like stuff like 40 books of Varro's Roman antiquities were a storehouse of erudition. In his, this is the one, On the Nature of the Gods, Cicero gave a quite accurate description of the state of rites and beliefs in the last century of the pagan era. Beautiful. On the Nature of the Gods. Now, what interests me more is Nordic paganism, but I still think stuff like this, I assume he's talking more about Roman paganism. I still think it would be great. The spread of Oriental cults and mystery religions in the Roman Empire and the religious syncretism that resulted, especially in Alexandria, were favorable to a knowledge of exotic religions and to study of the religious antiquities of various countries. During the first 2 centuries of the Christian era, the Euhemerist Herennius Philon published his Phoenician history, I think. And Pausanias, his description of Greece, in an exhaustible mind for historians of religions. The Pseudo-Apollodorus, his library, a work on mythology. Sorry if I'm not the best. I'm more of a modern philosophy guy, like Greek and French philosophers. So I want to get more into ancient philosophy, and that will also hopefully be part of the. I should say there's four things, right? Spirituality, politics, religious texts, or I would like to do ancient philosophy and text would be great too. Neo-Pythagoreanism, his Neoplatonism applied themselves to revalorizing the spiritual interpretation of myths and rites. A typical representation of his school of exegesis is Plutarch, especially in his treatise on Isis and Osiris. In his view, the diversity of religious forms was only apparent. Symbols revealed the fundamental unity of religions. The Stoic thesis was brilliantly restated by Seneca. The many divinities were aspects of one god. Meanwhile, descriptions of foreign religions and esoteric cults multiplied. Julius Caesar, 104 to 44 BC, and Tacitus, I think 550 to 120 after Christ, finally, furnished valuable information concerning the religions of the Gauls and the Germans. Oh, see, I'm German. I would like that one. Doesn't say where they put it, but we'll figure it out. Described the ceremony of initiation into the mysteries of Isis. Lucian gave an account of the Syrian cult on the Syrian goddess. For the Christian apologists and heresies, I've never heard this word before. The problem presented itself on a different plane, for they opposed the one God of the revealed religion to the many gods of paganism. Hence they were compelled on the one hand to demonstrate the supernatural origin and consequent superiority of Christianity, on the other to account for the origin of the pagan gods, and especially to explain why the pre-Christian world had been idolatrous. They also had to explain the resemblances between the mystery religions and Christianity. Several theses were advanced. 1. The demons born from intercourse between the fallen angels and the daughters of men, Genesis 6:2, had driven mankind to idolatry. 2. Plagiarism, the evil angels, knowing the prophecies, had introduced certain resemblances to Judaism and Christianity into the pagan religions to trouble believers. The pagan philosophers had borrowed their doctrines from Moses and the prophets. Oh, wow. Next, human reason can attain to knowledge of truth by its own power. Hence, the pagan word could have natural knowledge of God. Okay. The pagan reaction took various forms. It is manifested by the violent attack, circa 178, by the Neo-Pythagorean Celsus on the originality and a spiritual value of Christianity, by the life of Apollonius of Tyana, by the sophist Philostratus, circa 175 to 249, in which the religious conceptions of the Indians, Greeks, and Egyptians are compared, and which expounds a pagan ideal of piety and tolerance, by the Neoplatonist Porphyry, disciple and editor of Plotinus. Okay, I'm going to stop doing the dates. You can look up the dates if you want. Who skillfully attacks Christianity by employing the allegorious method by Iamcebius in about 280 to 330. Actually, it might be important. Who urges an ideal of syncretism and tolerance. The outstanding figures of the Christian counterattack were the Africans Minicius Felix, Lactantius, Tertullian, and Firmicius Maternus, and the great Alexandrian scholars Clement of Alexandria and Origen. Eusebius of Caesarea in his Chronicle, St. Augustine in the City of the Gods, and Paulus Orosius in the Histories dealt our last refutations to paganism. They agree with the pagan writers in maintaining the thesis of the increasing degeneration of religions. Their writings, like those of their opponents and of other Christian authors, have preserved much historical religious material in regard to the myth, rites, and customs of nearly all peoples of the Roman Empire, as well as to Gnostics and heretical Christian sects. Alright guys, I'm going to go grab some water real quick, okay? I'll be right back. My mouth's getting dry, that's why I'm fucking up some of these words so much. Sorry about that, guys. We're back. All right. Interest in foreign religions was awakened in the West during the Middle Ages by the threatening presence of Islam. In 1141, Peter the Venerable had the Quran translated by Robert de Retinez, and schools for the study of Arabic were founded in 1250. By that date, Islam had already produced important works on the subject of pagan religions. Al-Biruni this was about 973, had given a remarkable description of Indian religions and philosophies. Shahrastani, 1153, was the author of a treatise on the Islamic schools. Ibn Habs, this was about 1000, had compiled a voluminous and erudite books of decisive solutions concerning religion, sects, and schools, in which he discussed Mazdian and Manichaean dualism, Brahmins, Jews, Christians, atheists, and several Islamic sects. But it was especially Averroes who, after profoundly influencing Islamic thinking, was destined to give the first impulse to a whole, this was about 1150, to a whole intellectual trend in the West. In interpreting religions, Averroes employed the symbolic and allegorical method. He concluded that all the monotheistic religions were true, but he shared Aristotle's opinion that in an eternal world, religions appear and disappear again and again. Okay. So, he concluded all the monotheistic religions were true. Wow. But he shared Aristotle's opinion that in an eternal world, religions appear and disappear again. Among the Jewish scholars of the Middle Ages, two demand particular mention. Saadia, 892, in his Books of Beliefs and Convictions, expounded on the religions of the Brahmins, Christians, and Muslims in the framework of religious philosophy. Maimonides, we know that, undertook a comparative study of religions. I didn't know he was Jewish, though. I didn't know Maimonides was Jewish. Okay. Scrupulously avoiding the syncretistic position, he attempted to explain the imperfections of the first revealed religion. Judaism by the doctrine of the divine, condescension, I've never heard this word, and human progress thesis that had also been advocated by the fathers of the church. The appearance of the Mongols in Asia Minor and their hostility to the Arabs led the popes to send missions to inquire into their religions and customs. In 1244, Innocent IV dispatched 2 Dominicans and 2 Franciscans, one of whom, Jean Duplan de Carpin, made his way as far as Karakoram in Central Asia, and on his return wrote History of the Mongols. In 1253, Louis IX sent William Ricebrooke to Karakoram, where he tells us he withstood the Manichaeans and Saracens in debate. Finally, in 1274, the Venetian Marco Polo published his book, it's literally just called Book, in which, among countless other Oriental wonders, he told of the life of the Buddha. All these books were immensely successful on the basis of this new doctrine. Vincent of Bouvels, Roger Bacon, and Raymond Lowley expounded the beliefs of the idolaters, Tartars, Jews, and Saracens in various works. The theses of the earliest Christian apologists were taken up again, notably the doctrine of spontaneous knowledge of God and the thesis of degeneration and the demonic influence in the spread of polytheism. The Renaissance rediscovered and revalorized paganism, primarily because of the fashion for Neoplatonic allegorical interpretation. Marcifio Ficino edited Porphyry, the pseudo-Iambacius and Hermes Trismegistus, and composed a Platonic theology. He considered Plotinus, last disciple, to be the most authoritative interpreters of Plato. Last disciples. The humanists believed that there was a tradition common to all religions, that knowledge of it sufficed for salvation, and that in the last analysis all religions were equal in value. The year 1520 saw the appearance of the first general histories of religions, The Custom, Laws, and Rights of All Peoples by Jean Baume of the Teutonic Order. and contained descriptions of African, Asian, and European beliefs. That might be a good one too. The geographical discoveries of the 15th and 16th centuries opened new horizons for knowledge of religious man. The narratives of the first explorers were brought together in collections of voyages and had an enormous vogue among the educated European public. They were followed by the letters and revelations published by missionaries to America and China. A first attempt to compare the religions of the New World with those of antiquity was made by J.F. Lafitau in his Customs of the American Savages, compared to the customs of the earliest ages, published in 1724. In 1757, Charles de Brosses produced an essay on the cult of fetish gods, or parallel between the ancient religion of Egypt and the present religion of Nigritia, and presented it to the French Academy of Inscriptions, but the Academy considered it too daring to publish, so it appeared anonymously in 1760. Answering Lafitau and following Hume. De Brosses maintained that it was an error to believe that mankind first possessed a pure idea of God, which later degenerated. Okay, that's interesting. On the contrary, since the human mind rises by degrees from lower to higher, the first form of religion could only have been crude, that is, fetishism, a term that de Brosses used in the vague sense of the cult of animalisms, plants, and inanimate objects. Okay, so paganism. Okay. The English deists, especially Hume, and French philosophers and encyclopedists Rousseau, Voltaire, and the Germans of the Enlightenment, particularly F.A. Wolf and Lessing, vigorously contained the discussion of the problems of natural religion, but it was scholarly investigations who made a positive contribution to the interpretation of exotic pagan or primitive religions. Certain authors existed a great influence both by hypothesis that they advance and by the reactions that their works produce. Fontenelle, in his Discourse on the Origin of Fables, published in 1724, but composed 1680 to 1699, exhibited a penetrating historical sense and anticipated the animistic Freudian slip. The animistic theories of the 19th century. In 1794, Francois Dupuy published The Origin of All Cults, in which he sought to show that the history of the gods and even life of Christ are only allegories to the motions of stars, a thesis that was revived by Pan-Babylonians at the end of the 19th century. That's stupid. Frederick Kreuzer, in his Symbolisms of the Mythology of the Ancient People, especially the Greeks, that's what it was called, Symbolism and Mythology of the Ancient Peoples, especially the Greeks, 1810, attempted to reconstruct the primordial phases of Pelasgian and Oriental religions, and to show the role of symbols. His theses were demolished by the rationalist Christian Auguste Lobeck in an immense work published in 1829. Aglaophomius, as a result of the discoveries made in all branches of Oriental studies during the first half of the 19th century, as well as the establishment of Indo-European philosophy and comparative linguistics, the history of religions, first really entered into the own with Max Muller. His essay on comparative mythology, so that's the guy we talked about at the beginning, is his first of a long. So I don't understand why this is the first one after he just named all those ones. As a result of all the discoveries made in all the branches of Oriental studies during the first half of the 19th century, as well as the establishment of Indo-European philology and comparative linguistics, the history of religions first really entered into its own. I don't even know how you could say that with Max Muller, but okay, going on. His essay on comparative mythology, his first of all long series of studies by himself, and the disciplines of his theory. Max Muller found the genesis of myths and natural phenomena, especially in solar epiphanies, and explained the birth of gods as a disease of language. Boo. Which had originally been but a name, Nomen, became a divinity, Numen. His theses met with considerable success and lost their popularity only towards the end of the 19th century. As a result of the work, W. Manhart and Edwards Brunett Taylor, in his principal book, Cults of Forests and Fields, Manhart showed that the importance of the lower new mythology still surviving in the rites and beliefs of peasants. In his view, these beliefs represented an earlier stage of religion than the naturalistic mythology studied by Mueller. Manhart's thesis was adopted and popularized by Sir James George Fraser in The Golden Bough and that was in 1890. But in 1871 appeared E.B. Tyler's Primitive Culture, which was an epic-making book lauded in a new vogue, that of animism. According to Tyler's animistic theory, primitive man believed that everything was endowed with a soul, and that fundamental and universal beliefs... Oh, shit. My water just spilled all over Being in Time. Look at that. That was God telling me not to follow animism. It's stupid. I'm sorry. So, according to Tyler's animistic theory, primitive man believed that everything was endowed with a soul, and this fundamental and universal belief explained not only the cult of the dead and of ancestors, but also the genesis of the gods. A new theory, that of pre-animism, was developed from 1900 by R.R. Marette, K.T. Pruss, and other scholars. According to this theory, the origin of religion was to be sought in the experience of an impersonal force, mana. A critique of animism, but from a different point of view, was advanced by Andrew Lang from 1844 to 1912. He had observed the belief in supreme beings, all fathers, on archaic levels of culture, and could not explain it by belief in spirits. Wilhelm Schmidt, 1868 to 1954, took up this idea and, developing it from the standpoint of the methodology of cultural history, attempted to demonstrate the existence of a primordial monotheism, the origin of the idea of God. Other movements appeared toward the end of the 19th century and the beginning of the 20th. Emil Durkheim, 1858 to 1917, believed that he had found the sociological explanation for religion in totemism. Among Indians of North America, the term totem designates the animal whose name a clan bears and which is regarded as their ancestor. Okay? As clearly as 1869, J.F. McLennan had asserted that totemism represented the original form of religion, but later investigations, especially Fraser, showed that totemism is not universally disseminated, and that it cannot be regarded as the earliest form taken by religion. Lucien Levy-Bruhl sought to prove that religious behavior could be explained by the pre-logical mentality of primitives, a hypothesis that he renounced towards the end of his life. But these sociological hypotheses had no lasting influence on historical religious studies. A certain number of ethnologists attempted to approach their science as a historical discipline, and their studies indirectly made an important contribution to the history of religions. Among these historically oriented historically oriented ethnologists, we may cite F. Grabernein, Leo Frobenius, W. W. Rivers, and Wilhelm Schmidt in Europe, and Franz Boas and his school in America. Psychological explanations for religion were proposed by Wilhelm Wundt, 1832 to 1920, William James, 1842 to 1910, and Sigmund Freud, 56 to 1939. The phenomenology of religion had its first authoritative representative in Gerardus van der Leeuw, 1890 to 1950. At present, historians of religions are divided between two divergent but complementary methodological orientations. One group concentrate primarily on the characteristic structures of religious phenomena. The other chose to investigate their historical context. The former seek to understand the essence of religion, the latter to discover and communicate its history. I'm going to read that one more time. At present, historians of religions are divided between two divergent but complementary methodological orientations. One group concentrate primarily on the characteristic structures of religious phenomenon, and the other choose to investigate their historical context. So the ones that study the characteristic structures of religious phenomena are the ones that understand the essence of religion. And the latter, who are the ones who investigate their historical context, seek to discover and communicate its history. All right. Well, I hope you guys like that. I tried that out for a reason. I wanted to see if you guys would ever maybe like videos where I just read, and essays. It would be shorter essays, and then, you know, comment on it. But if you guys don't like that, I'll just do my, I kind of like doing the notes because then they're just more punchy and it's everything you need to know. Everything. I go through it and find what's important and tell you. You don't need to worry about this other stuff. But maybe I could do a mix of both, focus mostly on those, and then once in a while, maybe I could do live streams where I do these. You know what I mean? When I have more fans, if I ever get to the point where I can do live streams, maybe then we can do them. But you guys let me know. All right. Thanks for hanging out, and you know the vibe, you know the rules. Have a good night.